to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
We have a second?
Second.
Any comments? All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
The next item on the agenda is public comment.
Bob, I will abstain.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is public comment. Before we start, Ken, do you want to give instructions?
Sure thing. We ask that the public call the number that's on the website or in the YouTube video. And after you call in, we ask that you dial *9 or *9. That will put a little raised hand next to your phone number and indicate to me that you want to speak and you're not just calling in to listen. We will call out the last 4 digits of the phone number, and then you will hear you are unmuted, which will be your indication that it's your turn to speak.
Since the public hearing, I received a few comments, and Kathy has as well. One of them was from Teresa Oplatz. She was concerned about the use of the surplus and the fund balance in balancing the budget. Just asked about that question. And was also concerned about fixing the courts at Memorial School. Chuck Stengel also wrote in, and he said he supports the budget, the zero budget. Joe and Lynn Della Ventura called in and wanted to know how to vote on the budget tonight, and I told them that it was just a board vote and why. Barbara Allen did the same and wanted to know how the voting procedure was to go about, and I indicated to her what was going on as well. And Carl Stoop thanked you and thanked all the teachers and administrators for doing a great job. And Marianne O'Brien indicated that there was 25 watchers on the public hearing and thought they did an okay job. And I know Kath has some more.
Sure. Mrs. Viola from Durham was in touch with Bob and I, emailing, and she and I had a phone call, and all the emails that she wrote will be included in the minutes. And just to summarize, Mrs. Viola had questions about the guidance that we received from our attorney relative to the governor's executive order about retaining their budgets and keeping on employees and paying them in full. Also questions about retaining our bus drivers when they weren't driving. She complimented us on the virtual hearing, had some questions about how to sign on. She encouraged Bob and I to look at an article in the Middletown Press about what East Hampton was potentially doing in terms of a municipal salary freeze. She asked about the playscape at John Lyman School and why that was being replaced. She had questions about the magnet school, the $6,000 for magnet schools, and we tried to clarify the difference between the revenue for the magnet school transportation. She also had questions about the use of our fund balance. She had questions about the class action suit with the company that installed our turf field. Again, questions about using the surplus, and felt that the board was not scrutinizing the budget proposals from the superintendent to the degree that they should. More questions about the turf, questions about the Corn School personnel and the cuts that were made to Corn School and why some people were placed in other schools. I did send Mrs. Viola all of the staffing for Corn School. Bear with me, I just printed all of the emails. I don't want to miss anything. just questions about staffing, the need for counselors across the district in various areas, more about the turf. Again, a little bit more about taking the advice of legal, and then was certain that the board would make the right decision as we move forward in terms of retaining staff and paying staff. And I feel that that summarizes, again, all these were shared with the Board of Education, will be in the minutes, but those were the high level issues that were raised to Bob and I and answered. And that's what I have, Bob.
Thank you. We have time now for any other public comment who are on the line.
All right, right now we have one person with their hand raised. The phone number ends in 0738. You're going to hear, you are unmuted. Please state your name and town before making your comment.
Danya Viola, Durham. Thank you, Kathy, for the summary. And I just want to reiterate a statement I've made a few years ago and continue to be concerned because of the situation of the cost of school budgets. I do think it is time for the Board of Education to send a letter off to our state representatives asking that any mandates up for consideration as pertains to education be carefully reviewed and scrutinized, since circumstances and funding vary when being part of a regional school district and where the towns involved do not contribute evenly for implementing them. Duplicate programs may exist already in the state or in the community to address specific situations, but if they are not adequately examined, there will undoubtedly be loss of control by the school boards. On that note, I'm almost positive, and I sincerely feel you do realize that no amount of spending can determine success rates. And without looking to deep pockets to sustain teacher salaries and benefits, I think we have to look in the area of employment very seriously, especially in the time of this COVID-19. Thank you, and I will look forward to your response and intend to listen to what others have to say and opinions for this hearing and for the decisive action taken. Good night.
Thank you. Ms. Viola, is any other comments?
We have one other caller, but they do not have their hand raised. If you wish to speak for public comment, please dial *9 to indicate that you want to participate.
Well, if there's no other comments, Kath, we have a recognition of the CABE Student Awards.
Yes, we have 4 students who are going to be recognized this evening at Strong School. Sophia Hurlbut, and I'll just give a brief summary from what her teachers submitted for her for the CABE Student Leadership Award. Sophia is a quiet leader, well-rounded, involved in the arts, thoughtful, and displays patience with others. She is wise, mature for her age, compassionate, and displays analytical and conceptual understanding in all content areas. And Riley Byro in 8th grade. Riley displays kindness to all and models our core ethical values. She has a terrific sense of humor, exhibits perseverance and leadership in both a quiet and outward manner. Riley is genuine and shows self-confidence in all she endeavors. At the high school, we have Lynn Vo, who is someone who I believe the board is familiar with. She is someone who worked on our strategic visioning and portrait of the citizen process. Lynn Vo is an extraordinary young woman of the utmost character. She is intelligent, conscientious, talented, and compassionate. She personifies our core ethical values. Lynna has been recognized for her achievements by being inducted into the National Honor Society and the Spanish Honor Society. This year, she was elected Rotary Student of the Month and was chosen by our faculty for the Daughters of the American Revolution Good Citizens Award. She is a member of EDGE, where she is devoted to helping students make healthy choices and educating them about the dangers of substance abuse and vaping. Lynna is an integral part of the music program. She's a member of the Girls A Cappella Group, show choir, concert band, pep band, and lab jazz band. She is captain of both band and show choir this year. Nicholas Vestergaard, who's also one of our board reporters this year, was chosen for the Cape Student Leadership Award. He's an outstanding young man, intelligent, responsible, determined, and hardworking, a positive role model for the youth in our district. He's been recognized for his accomplishments with his induction into the National Honor Society and the Spanish Honor Society. He is a 3-season athlete, a member of the soccer, indoor, and outdoor track teams. He has made shorelines and states for both indoor and outdoor track. He is also a 3rd-degree black belt in Taekwondo. He has competed nationally and internationally and ranks 33rd in the United States. He enjoys sharing his passion by teaching children the art of Taekwondo. Nick recently received the prestigious honor of Eagle Scout. He assists teaching Sunday school at his church, volunteers at the Durham Fair, helping local organizations raise money for charitable causes, and volunteers for the Osterman Community Foundation. So congratulations to our 4 students.
Congratulations, students. I don't know if any of you are on the phone and would like to say anything.
I think they're just watching via YouTube tonight, Bob.
Okay. Well, congratulations on this award. It really shows the importance of all the work that you have done for our schools and your commitment to each other. Kathy, we have also the recognition of our student reporters.
Well, for the student reporters, Ava Cowell, Josh Mann, and Nicholas Vestergaard, we just, I think if the board would like to say anything about them, we've sent them gift certificates on behalf of the Board of Education for keeping the board informed, and I think a very mature and professional manner throughout the entire year.
I would also like to thank each one of them for giving us and keeping us informed of what's going on. They had a short term this year because we haven't seen them for several months, but nor has there been a lot to report on. But thank you again so much for all your reporting and for coming to keep us informed. I think you have another duty to kind of find next year's seniors who will be our reporters as well. So that might be the next job you have before you graduate. Any other comments for our reporters?
Not from me, unless other board members wanted to say something.
Again, thank you all, and thank you for being with us for this year. I hear somebody. And congratulations on your graduation. The next item is approval of the minutes of the Board of Education meeting on May 6th. The motion to approve those minutes. The second.
Second.
You, Victor. Any comments? And all in favor? Aye.
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 We also have approval of the minutes of the public hearing on the budget of May 13th, 2020. Have a motion to approve those minutes.
I so move.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments on that? I'd like to thank Deb for getting them done so well. All in favor, please say aye.
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 The next board meeting is on June 10th, 2020 at 7 p.m. We'll have an executive session at the end of that for the superintendent's evaluation, annual evaluation. Is that okay with you, Lucy? Yes.
Yes, that's fine. Please make sure that I have most of the evaluations. I still have a couple more that need to come in. So, get them in as soon as you can. Thank you.
The next item is the school closure update, Kath.
Sure, Bob. We have about 2.5 weeks remaining in the school year, and based on feedback that we got from parents and staff, we did make some slight alterations to the very end of the school year. For next week, students will have Friday off, and we have about 150 staff members who will participate in a parade through Durham and Middlefield. We've been working with the bus company who has 7 bus routes and 7 bus drivers who will be leading about 25 staff members each through different bus routes, just so our kids can see representative members of our faculty and staff. We have food service members, all our principals, teachers, paraprofessionals represented. And Kim and I have talked before about how fortunate we feel to have the transportation company that we have. The bus drivers were absolutely thrilled and kind of, fighting each other to be the person who got to lead the parade. And so we're working closely to look at what kind of construction we're going to have on Pickett Lane so we don't have a log jam there. And I'm working with Laura to see what we can do about the construction on Main Street so we make sure our parade doesn't get stuck there. For those staff members who aren't participating in the parade, their end of year responsibilities that include budgets, ordering, curriculum writing, classroom cleanup. We're moving many classrooms, curriculum planning, report cards, grades, collaborative meetings, class placements, IEPs, 504 meetings, and department meetings. I did mention the classroom cleanup, as we've already begun to look at the expectations for potentially if we were to have in-school summer school, which we think is a little bit of a preview of coming attractions of what's going to be expected for us if we return to the building. We're really looking for people to completely clean their classrooms and have as little extraneous materials on their desks or anywhere in their classroom. So as people are coming back in safely, we're going to be asking for kind of ruthless cleanup. Our final full week of school will be the week of June 8th. The principals and their staff have created this really amazing different kind of fun opportunities that will be shared with parents on this Friday. There's a grid of kind of scavenger hunts, virtual field days, and opportunities for students to have greater face time with their teachers and other staff members. So the last day for students will be June 12th. The last day for staff will remain on June 16th. We know that we have a significant amount of work to do regarding just having teachers being able to really talk about their students, to see to the best of their ability how they performed this year, what individual students might need, what classes of students might need, and what type of modifications will need to be done to curriculum and instruction. In terms of the high school, we have a virtual graduation that is being put together, just a recording. All the kids will be picking up their cap and gowns soon and taking a picture of themselves. Bob and I recorded our graduation speeches this afternoon or this evening at about 6. There'll be musical performances, and students will get that on the evening that they were supposed to graduate on June 16th. On July 31st, we have a kind of a placeholder for some type of an in-person graduation. We made the decision as an administrative team and with feedback from our health director, our students, and our parents that in no way did we want to contribute to the spreading of the virus to our students, their families, or the communities of Durham and Middlefield. And we feel very, very strongly that we wouldn't plan a graduation that in any way would jeopardize that. We are waiting to July 31st to see if there are any changes, any kind of expansion of what might be able to happen in person, but we remain committed to the health of our students, our families, and the community. We also, the end of year, included a survey to families to get feedback from them, really to see how did it go? What are the things that you're concerned about if we are to go back to school in the fall in some form of distance learning? We wanted feedback from them. Corey DiMaggio and the building principals also have done focus groups with staff throughout the district to get feedback from the staff. And then the end of the year has also included getting ready for the beginning of the year. And within the past 2 weeks, we got some guidance from the regional advisory committees. Norm is, I believe, is on the regional advisory committee. He might be able to add some information before I go over our preparation for the start of the school year. But they had identified 6 general categories with, after having received just really widespread feedback that I'll review with you. So that process has started in earnest for us, again, with looking at back in school in the fall in our buildings, continuation of distance learning, or some combination of the two. So that has been, that's what we're looking at and what we've been involved in at the end of the school closure period.
Kath, would you like me to comment on some of those items?
You know what, the next item on the agenda that I'm going to be giving a little bit of a review on is our strategic plan for reopening and recovery. So, and you know, much of that for me at this point has been directed by the information that we've gotten to date. I understand that next week we should be getting a close to 100-page document with more direction. But what I did was I used the information I had to get us started in District 13. So yes, that'd be great, Norm.
Well, the RESC Regional Advisory Board meets weekly. It's an interesting group. Each of the regional educational service centers has a 10-member group, and we take some of the documents that come from the state, and we go back and forth and modify them, critique them. They'll, of course, be eventually sent on to Governor Lamont, as well as the Connecticut State Board of Education. Kathy alluded to the 6 categories, which are supporting well-being for students, staff, and families, the spread mitigation that is always on people's minds, operations and logistics, coordination, communication, teaching and learning, and finally, potential second wave closing, which of course would require some contingency planning. So that we've had lengthy conversations about that, as well as what's next year going to look like. And we looked at 3 different scenarios as would we be going to alternating days? Would be going to half days, or we would continue with individual learning? And we've had some conversation about that. Of course, there's no real answer to that at this point in time. So so we'll have to stay tuned to that. Last week, or this week rather, we talked about summer school and opening during the summer. You may have received a document from Governor Lamont called Reopen Connecticut. I don't know if that was sent out, but we have scrutinized it. We're looking at a number of different themes. The reopening process, what is physical space going to look like, personal protection, and who supplies it, who's going to use the masks and that sort of thing. There's been a significant conversation about our kindergarten and younger students with compliance. I think the older kids understand it, but the younger kids may not. But that certainly remains to be seen. Of course, cleaning and disinfecting is really a top priority. Health guidance for employees. We spent a good deal of time on bathroom protocols. That's kind of how I spent my Tuesday afternoon. And certainly bus protocols. How are the buses going to look when students are riding them? And is there going to be a significant shift in student transportation? And part of this group, we also have each of the rest has subgroups as well for talent and professional learning, teaching and learning, classroom cleaning, and safety and operations. So we're getting a lot of information, a lot of feedback. Some of you may have supported some of our work through the Thought Exchange. This happened back in March. There was an open door. There were a lot of constituents who spoke, a lot of board members, principals, superintendents, parents, students who provided their data, which is some of the background that we're using to come up with some of our recommendations. So the party is still going on, and I have tons of documentation. If with Bob's permission, I can certainly send it to Meg, and that can be distributed. There are certainly no secrets. Everything is always in draft form at this point in time, but it's interesting reading. If you have insomnia, it would be perfect. So, and that's pretty much what we've been doing every week for the last 4 weeks.
I think I shared with the board the draft summer school requirements, and again, if it's any indication of what is being suggested for public school systems to keep students and staff healthy and safe, there's 3 months between now and the start of school, and the undertaking is complex, and it truly is, a yeoman's job to pull something like this together. And as school professionals, we certainly are relying on people, our consulting physician, and the expertise that we have in-house. However, I cannot share this with the board without indicating that trying to do this in a way that we can adhere to the recommendations that we have to date, which may be different next week. So what I'd like to do is just share with you where we are at this point. We'll be reviewing this with the planning and response team next Tuesday, and at that time we'll be kind of separating some of the work into smaller subgroups and committees. But essentially what I did was to take those 6 areas that Norm has talked about and kind of build it into our strategic coherence plan using an overarching goal, improvement strategies or action steps, timelines, person responsible, and resources needed. But what I did was just to put together a PowerPoint with a bit of an overview for you at this point. So just give me a moment and I will share this with you. again, these are the 6 areas that Norm reviewed for you. Just something recently before we get into the area of well-being, a recent article where we're looking at potentially what are some of the things that we will face in trying to support students. Clearly, I'm hearing first case accounting from parents who have called me and shared with me the experiences that their children, truly children of all ages, from our youngest students to our seniors in high school, just a time of tremendous confusion for them. The projection of our seeing increased anxiety and depression in students because of, for some students, this has been a period that could be really described as trauma for some students, as well as just many children have a fear of catching the virus, that it has increased thoughts about death and dying, both for themselves and family members. The return to routine for many children who have not had a routine at all could be something that it could be very difficult for many kids, especially our older students. They're on a completely different sleep schedule that will have gone on for several months. A big concern for parents, for the school district, and for students in general is that kind of recalibration of a huge part of what school is about, is that kind of finding that social group, reuniting with your tribe, finding a new tribe. And just, we've talked about this before. We have some students who have pushed through school anxiety and fears and are here and have been here every day. And for those students, this will present a pretty mighty challenge to get back into the day-to-day. So on the top of the slide, we just kind of came up with what we see as our overarching goal. And what we'd like to do, and what our best thinking around how we're supporting, well-being and mental health is really to start with what has worked here for us and use that as our basis, and then build our expertise based on individualized needs, individualized to the particular situation and to our students. We do have, this was part of the budget, taking on 2 interns from the Marriage and Family Therapy department at CCSU, where we think that will be a tremendous support for us. We've always worked very closely with youth and family services in town, and we'd like to strengthen that even further. And, as we think about what transitioning, if we are to come back to school, we know that when there is a period of uncertainty, it's always helpful to reassure people, this is what's going to happen. This is when it's going to happen. This is how it's going to happen. So to the degree that we can do that, and including when it's time to come back to school, kind of gently reintroducing students into the building proper. We've developed reunification design plans at every level to kind of bring children together with their classroom, with their grade levels, with their teachers, and with their school at large. We believe that play is critically important, and being sure that children are able to spend time outside. We also see that because parents have reached out to us, that there's tremendous fear in the parent population and struggles that children may be having, that parents are also finding a challenge to support and deal with. We want to be sure that our teachers are supported. Another part of the well-being is that we have staff members in every area of our district that who are frightened to come back to work, who may be medically compromised, who may have a family member who is medically compromised. So we will be, looking at what is our workforce, do we have people who really legitimately should not return to work if we are returning to work? And what would that look like? And how do we support the people who will be in our buildings? We will need to be doing, which comes up in another place, the contact tracing, self-reporting. And we will need to build within our schools another kind of form of support. If people are seeing things in their buildings that is upsetting to them or isn't following a protocol, we need a process by which people can report that. We also need to talk about if we are to come back to school, what are the second steps if there is a second wave that we're going to be needing to exit the school? What will that be like? What will the protocol be that we will follow for that? When we have talked about spread mitigation, there are the areas that we've addressed in terms of just kind of hygiene expectations, but there's also the physical plant. What are our daily operations? How are we moving about the building? What are we doing with touch points and bathrooms and deliveries, as well as our health offices? What will happen with our health office? So those are kind of the two overarching goals in that area. We need to look carefully at the types of PPE that we'll need to have on hand. The summer school guidelines indicate that students and staff can provide their own masks, for instance, but if they don't, that the school needs to provide them. What we do know that, depending on the mask that someone might use, they need to be fit tested. And there are many other areas that people would benefit from training, even some basic things in terms of hand washing and sneezing into your elbow. Kim and I today met again with Sue and Jimmy, and we're talking at kind of the macro level about what happens in our buildings, what are we ordering in terms of products, how do we use them, what's the protocol by which we use certain products, what's the kind of the schedule that we'll be following for cleaning and sanitizing. We will, based on the information that we've gotten so far, we need to talk about an isolation or quarantine area for the nurse's office, which clearly in all of our nurse's office does not exist. So we'll need to look at expanding to an area that is in close proximity to the nurse's office for an isolation or quarantine area, which again, based on the protocols we received so far, would need to be supervised by a staff member. We've also need to look at our ventilation system throughout the school to make sure that we're bringing in as much fresh air as possible, which based on our system is something that we're able to do. In terms of operations and logistics, things, as you can see here, kind of whether or not we need to revise any of our policies, we will likely, as you know, we did memorandums of agreements for all 6 of our bargaining units between March and April, and we'll likely need to do that again over the course of the summer. We've looked at many things, amending the school calendar, starting later in the year, starting the day later, ending the day earlier, flexing people by week, by day, staggering grade levels. So we have a number of areas that we've looked at. Basic things, classroom layout. If we actually lay out our classrooms in the ways that have been suggested for us, that's going to mean that we need to take an awful lot of furniture out of classrooms and put that furniture somewhere else. And that is, it's a lot of furniture. Just, some of the other things to look at: food service. The recommendation at this point is that students would not eat in a cafeteria together. So we need to just look at the protocols that we would follow for food distribution. Some of the other areas that have been mentioned already, transportation. there've been a rough estimate that if we were to change our transportation to either accommodate an every other day, which seems kind of silly to me, or an every other week, that they're kind of earmarking or suggesting that would be approximately an increase of $1,000 per student. We will be surveying parents to see that if in fact we do return to school, would they have their child ride the bus, or would they be transporting them themselves, just so we have a better idea of the total number of students that we would be transporting. And then, kind of a secondary focus area then would be for us is what our parent drop off and pick up process would look like. Kim has already begun to work on developing a protocol and procedure for our FEMA reimbursement. So anything that we are purchasing that we otherwise would not have had to purchase if it weren't for COVID needs to have a particular code for when we submit for reimbursement. Communication, just kind of, it's not basic, but following a particular plan so that we are giving information and receiving information on a scheduled basis in a way that is as clear and consistent as possible. I think second to the health and safety and well-being of our students, which is our foundation. We can't move from that to teaching and learning if our students are sick or our staff are sick. Again, this is something that the administrative team and other school staff members began to work on a couple months ago. That is school specific in terms of how will we meet the needs of our students, how will we determine where they are, what they need individually, and what they need as a group. I'm interested and haven't looked at it yet. What does the research tell us on individual students who have experienced, I'm calling it interrupted learning, there may be another term for it, and can we be advised by that type of research in terms of our approach to supporting our students? The second wave closing contingencies, I'm really waiting for more information from the CDC, from our health director, in terms of what will the indicators be for the state on the advent of a second wave, and what will the triggers be for us in terms of response and moving into another school closure. And that's where we are right now. And I'm happy I actually would really love to hear from the board in terms of any thoughts that you have as you see this information and as you've reviewed the draft plan that I shared with you about summer school and what the recommendations or mandates and expectations would be.
Any comments right now? I assume everybody can text you or call you about their comments.
I'm sorry, Bob, I didn't hear that.
I said if there's any other comments right now on your, that would be helpful to you, or would you like to have people, email you some of their thoughts?
That would be great. You can email me, call me. A few of the board members have been in touch with me and have said things like, Kathy, you probably already thought of this. We can't think of everything, and we're getting closer and closer to the work that sometimes, and we've never gone through something like this before. So any feedback you have, any ideas, I appreciate hearing that. And then just, finally, I did summarize for parents in the most recent newsletter what and this is just a high level summary, and I'll put this presentation on the website so people can, at your leisure, take a look at it in terms of what the expectations would be. And again, these are in draft form at this point. One of the requirements would be to appoint a health and safety compliance liaison. And what I would like to, I've talked to Bob briefly about this, but I know that in the budget proposal, we had a 0.5 HR specialist. And what I would like to do is to make that position a full-time position without increasing the head count. When I look at what the expectations are for us as a school district in terms of FMLA and meeting the huge requirements of just staffing, making decisions about staffing, sick time, and substitutes, I feel that it's critical that we have a full-time person given what we're going to navigate. At this point, we do have, we will be hiring a long-term substitute for our instrumental music teacher at the high school, and we'll be hiring that person at a 0.6 level just because of the change in staffing. And so that would be a 0.4 that I can put towards the HR position, and then we'll find another position that we can reduce by a 0.1 to change the HR position to a full-time position. I have to say, I mean, this is not something that I feel very, very strongly that it's critical to our being able to move forward, because if without a full-time position, I think that that's a responsibility that that will be mine, and I think that will be just a very difficult thing to try to manage, running the district and working at that human resource level, and it will likely be Kim and I who would be overseeing that. So again,
Kath,
yes,
regarding that health and safety liaison, have you discussed with the Southington Health District what type of support they can lend to help fulfill that role?
this is somebody who really kind of needs to be in-house for us, and we have the Southington Plainville Health District has been extraordinarily helpful, and they are absolutely at their max in terms of managing the municipal side of the house. But we can talk about that again at next Tuesday's meeting, Bob.
Okay.
One of the things that I've been doing is also the chairmans of the board.
It's Missy. Sorry. Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead. Go ahead, Missy.
I was just going to say, I thought when I read through the document that Kath sent us that it said it had to be someone that was employed by our district for that liaison.
Yeah, it needs to be an in-house person. I thought what Bob was asking was how could the health district assist in terms of just supporting with information. I wasn't thinking of it in terms of them, being the person. And as I sent out to parents and the board, our commitment right now is to continue with distance learning this summer, because at this point we do not believe that we can meet the expectations that will assure students health and safety at this point. If things change and we are able to safely and with a small group of students or individual students provide some face-to-face instruction, we will absolutely consider that. But at this time, we, along with many districts around the state, will not be engaging in in-person instruction this summer.
one of the things that I've been doing is every Friday there's a meeting of all the chairmen of the Board of Education on a Zoom meeting, and the issues are basically parallel to what we've been talking about. Graduation was last week. This week it's on reopening, and the issues are all the same. Is this really possible? Is there going to be a demand for it? And later in the discussion is how are we going to pay for this? How are we going to get supplies? Can the state provide all the purchasing for all the equipment that's going to be needed, so schools aren't, some of them can't get it and others can't afford it? The criteria, I think, for reopening is going to be extremely costly, and how are we going to manage that? I think one of the things, as Kath indicated on the HR person, I think what the board is going to have to consider a lot of changes within our budget to accommodate the cost of reopening if we reopen, and possibly changing some positions and staying within our budget, but also, within the budget, moving systems or personnel or other people around to meet some of the demands that we're going to have. But there's no, most schools, most chairmen, most boards are basically working with their superintendent, and the superintendents are taking the lead with small committees of their staff and trying to, prepare long-range plans to get into this. Most are gone a two-track system. One, we stay distance learning, and the other one is how do we open? So I think there's, all this is happening at every school district, and nobody seems to have the perfect answer as of yet. And some schools are asking that there be single guidance from the state, and other schools, that have only, 80 or 100 students in the whole school system are saying, let us figure out how we're going to do it ourselves. So there's quite a disparity between Bridgeport and Sterling or Brooklyn. And they're looking for different answers for all those different schools. So that communication goes on every week. The issues are virtually the same as we're talking about here.
Kim had a couple of things that I wanted to make sure she was able to share with the board, just so you had the update on where we are with food service and a couple other areas.
Excuse me, Kath, could you stop sharing so we have a better view of the field of participants?
Oh,
Screen
sure.
share is still.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. I thought you wanted me to stop talking, Victor.
Hey, Kath, but before we leave the summer program, I think you're conducting surveys of parents and students, so I'm sure you've heard, like I've heard, that the students want more video type education, content and contact, etc. And I know at our last meeting, Andrew Taylor raised the issue, do we have the platforms and technology in place to support that kind of thing? Do we need to be putting more money towards that? Do we have the facilities? I just wanted to ask that question and raise it, because I think it was a very valid point at the last meeting, and I think it's something that I've probably talked to 20 or 30 different students and parents over the last couple of weeks, and that's the kind of the feedback I'm getting.
Sure, thanks for bringing that up, and we're absolutely listening and adjusting and planning, and Ken and I are consistently in conversations about what is in the budget, what needs to be in the budget, what feedback do we have from teachers in terms of how do we enhance their ability to deliver fill in the blank, live instruction, to do greater demonstrations, to have more online text. So that is kind of being multiply informed. You know, one of our teachers, for instance, has been using the document camera. You know, we've talked about, do we have kind of a lending library? Do we buy a $200 to $500 document camera for everybody? Or is it kind of a sign out system where we've got a number of them, and depending on your lesson, you're able to use them? Another thing that we've talked about, not completely, well, kind of related to this, is that if we were back in a distance learning situation, having teachers come into school and teach from the classroom rather than teaching from their home. So they would have access to other technology. But, you know, the short answer is yes, yes, and yes, and being informed by several areas about what changes we might make to the availability of different types of technology.
Yeah, because I just, you know, I get concerned because we've made such progress in the district and moving the district forward. And we are in totally uncharted waters right now. And it just, I don't want to see us lose, and I don't want to see the children lose, because at the end of the day, our primary mission is education, and it is so challenging, and we need to make sure it's as effective as it can be. And I know you're working towards that. I know you're planning towards that. I just, you know, wanted to raise it and let everybody know in the community. So thank you.
Yep, thanks. I will say, before Kim touches on a couple of items that I wanted her to share, that you know, as Bob is saying, there's a CABE call every Friday, and there's a health director's call, there's a governor's call, there's a commissioner's call, and then there's meetings that I have with my professional organization as well as the area superintendent's group. And I feel very, very fortunate to have you as a board, to know that you're going to be honest, to know that you are supportive in whatever way, that I have a very smart board, a caring board, and we also are working in a community where we have trust, we have communication, and you can't build those things. You can't build a relationship with your board in a time of, you know, a trauma, a pandemic. And so I think we're that much farther ahead than so many other districts, because we're starting with a basic foundation of trust, communication, and a willingness to listen to each other and support each other. And I just wanted to acknowledge that. I think about that every single day in this work.
Thank you.
Kim?
I thought it was important to mention that the food service department has been serving meals since we closed on March 16th. The numbers have increased from a couple of lunches a week to over 500 a week most recently. In order to do this, we had to apply for a waiver so that we could offer the lunches in non-congregate seatings and during shutdown, which typically we didn't do. We did receive the waiver, and we were allowed to offer meals to all Durham and Middlefield residents age 18 and under. This waiver ends June 30th, and at that time, the district will no longer meet the requirement. There could be potentially an extension on the waiver, but that is still to be determined. At which time, though, if there is no extension, we no longer we wouldn't meet the criteria, which is a 50% free and reduced population. And in the past, the district doesn't meet that for the summer, hasn't met it for the summer, and can send our students to Middletown, which we have in the past. So we're working on solidifying those relationships again with Middletown and Meriden to have sites for the students to pick up lunches. Now, having said that, though, during this time of unplanned school closure, and these meals, they come at a price. So they're not reimbursed at the same amount that a regular school lunch is from the National School Lunch Program. and there's no revenue coming in. There's no extras. There's no, additional foods being sold, breakfast sandwiches, that kind of stuff. So the revenue in the food service has essentially gone to zero, and the expenditures, are pretty much raising every day. We have made the best effort that we can to use the supplies we have in hand in terms of what's in the freezer. Difficult to keep hot meals hot. But Mark and his staff are doing a great job with that. So having said all that, that's sort of my lead up to the point where the food service is now operating in a deficit. And we have had to make a transfer from the general fund to the food service fund, all owned by the same, it's not a separate company, it's owned by the board, in order to pay the payroll. I think that's just a timing thing, because once we are able to submit our FEMA grant, all this stuff is FEMA reimbursable, and it's at 75%. So I'm estimating, again, a rough estimate, but of $100,000 deficit by the end of this period, June 30th, and with a $75,000 reimbursement. So costing the food service about $25,000. That's tough to absorb anyways when we're operating pretty close to break even. So we can discuss that a little bit further once the numbers are solid, sort of maybe in July, how you'd like to approach that, whether it be a loan, whether it be a district contribution to those COVID expenditures. And that's just something to think on. I'm not looking for an answer anytime soon. And there's also some discussion. I attended a webinar on the FEMA reimbursement and also with the state of Connecticut. And there was mention that USDA may be offering some financial assistance to the districts that were offering the food service. Hasn't been any further guidance, but that might be another area that we might be able to recoup some of that $25,000. Some more to come on that. In addition to that, I attended a FEMA grant application webinar, and I've begun preparing the proper documentation. Such as Dr. Serino said, there's certain project codes we have to provide so that we can print a simple report out of our software system and put in for reimbursement. So that's ongoing. Those are anything that you would not have purchased had you not been in the pandemic. And a lot of things do apply to that. The last piece I just wanted to mention was the CARES funding grant application. That's the $111 million that the state of Connecticut received under the CARES funding. And it's distributed to towns based on their Title I appropriate percentage. And recently they released the numbers, and RSD13 is going to be receiving $43,000. So it's not a lot of money. And that's under the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. There are 4 areas of priorities under that. The first is connectivity. Second is for curriculum. The third is educational recovery. And the fourth area being social emotional well-being. So those are the 4 areas that the money will be approved to be spent under. What we do with it is a district and board decision. And we, at this point, when we apply, we can just give them a percentage. Maybe we're going to put 10% here, 20% there, and then we can change that. So it's an easy grant application because we don't know at this point. So we'll be doing just a little bit of work to find out how we're going to apply those percentages and get the funds. I doubt any grant applications will be refused except for you're buying pink Cadillacs. Other than that, anything that's reasonable, it will be approved. And then the other important thing is this funding is not to supplant what's already in the budget, it's to supplement. So you've already budgeted for certain services, you can't take that money and offset it. It's got to be an additional service. It's got to be for costs that would not have occurred if you hadn't had the pandemic. And the application is available online this week, so I'll be starting that process as well.
Hey, Kim, I had a question for you about the food service, the waiver expiring at the end of June.
Mm-hmm.
What is the consequences to the district if the waiver expires, but we continue to provide meals for those students that need it?
We would not be able to fall under the National School Lunch Program. That would eliminate us from the entire year-long, National School Lunch Program. That's one of the requirements. It's called a seamless summer option, but you have to be 50% free and reduced in order to so we're just not eligible. If we were to do it and run it at our own cost, we'd have to run the whole year food service program on our own. There would be no reimbursement.
Okay, thank you.
Any
Do
other?
you know if Durham Middlefield Youth and Family Services could offer anything during the summer along that line?
I haven't spoken to them about that. I can reach out. Like I said, I know Middletown and Meriden are far. Those are our closest community. They're called community eligible so that they can serve, students of different communities, not just their own as well. A lot of our towns surrounding us don't meet the 50% either. So they're our closest ones. But I can ask and see if they have some sort of plan in place.
They actually have reached out to me about some of their food programming, food support for families, and I've included that in my newsletters to parents. I don't know how many people are taking advantage of that, but when Kim and I send out, when we remind people that it's, what the options are for summer in terms of the program, I once again will add that. So I know that that's an option out there, Bob.
Yeah, okay. I also know that I'm not sure of the situation in Durham, but the Middlefield Food Pantry has received a number of donations above and beyond what we normally receive at this time of year. So I know that our pantry in Middlefield is well stocked and available for people that are in need.
Yeah.
But, and I'm not sure if Durham is in a similar situation or not. I haven't heard, but it's just, it's heartbreaking to think that a child may go hungry.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Any other comments on all those issues, the update, the reopening in the summer school? If not, I'll move to item 11. It's a vote on the proposed 2020-21 budget. Maybe Norm, you could read the motion.
Yes, I'd be glad to. So to get this on the floor for some official discussion, I move to adopt the proposed 2020-2021 budget, which reads, shall we accept the proposed budget of $37,371,908 for the 2020-2021 fiscal year as prepared and presented by the Regional District 13 Board of Education.
I have a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Lucy.
Lucy wins.
Is there any discussion?
Just,
Go ahead, Bob.
no, my only question is based on where we are, Kim and Kath. Are we? I know that there's so much uncertainty, but do we think we have what we need in the budget for the coming year at this time?
I can speak to the financial piece, not so much the educational piece, but I do foresee, should we have some differences, so we're back to distance learning, then the trade-off's going to be no athletics. So there will be some funds that are freed up. So financially, I say, I feel comfortable enough that, if there's a big enough change, we've got the CARES Act money, not a lot of money, $43,000, but it's something. Some of our expenditures can be, other than food service, can also be FEMA reimbursable, such as cleaning supplies, PPE. So there are avenues out there that we can tap without having to necessarily increase the budget. I may come back in a few months, or actually, maybe in January, February of next year and say, can we move some of this professional learning money or, over to some supplies? And it'll be a decision at that time that you would make. I don't anticipate any of that right now, but anything could happen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
With that reassurance that Kim, you feel that the budget is sufficient, that's great. I just had a couple of things. I know that people have brought up, not us, but the public has brought up about wanting our budget to be even less than it is this year. And, as I look back, I look at some of the information. I mean, our gross budget may have gone up, but the total amount this year, but the total amount of the proposed budget is even less than it was 5 years ago. It's about $145,000 less in a 5-year period. And that includes salary and benefit increases over the last 5+ years, increased costs of operating, and especially the continuation of new educational initiatives. So they haven't suffered at all. So for the budget to have the gross budget to actually be less than it was 5 years ago is phenomenal. And we've also had staffing decreases and over the last 5 years, the entire budget has been a negative increase. So, and that's one of the reasons why I definitely support this budget this year. The other thing I want to bring up, which isn't directly related to this budget, and it's bringing up next year, and it's outside of the realm of all we've been talking about with the virus and everything, and who knows where this will be. But if things do settle down and we're able to get the discussion in, I'd really like us to revisit completing the field house and getting our building committee together and coming up with a proposal that either will go in as a bonded amount that the public would approve or disapprove, or even a phased in, which may be part of the budget, but a separate piece. But I just wanted to put that out there because I know there are people that are still concerned about that. That's it.
Thank you, Lucy. Any other comments?
Quickly, just to address Bob's comment about, do we have what we need? I think in some areas, the answer is absolutely not. And we're going to need to assess, regardless of where we are, distance back in the building, distance and back in the building. But I think what our commitment is to first, before we are additive, to see how can we change things? Because certainly I could bring in a team of counselors if I needed some counselors to come in to work with students. I might need more reading specialists or interventionists. First, what I would do is use the people I have in a different capacity, because I think we're going to be assessing and reprioritizing. And I believe that the board understands we will follow a protocol of decision-making, and there may be a time where I say, I need to increase the budget. We've got to get this resource in for students or staff, whether it's a physical, something that really is kind of falls into that logistics and operations or well-being or the educational continuity. But, to Kim's point, that's what we've done so far is we're not expending this, but we must do this. So instead of doing this, we'll do this. And just to be always upfront with the board, here's what we're thinking. This is how we believe we'll address it. So the board knows and the public knows. I just can't guarantee it won't change the budget.
Okay. Fair enough.
I'd just like to make a remark about process. And it's true that we don't have 50 people sitting in the library with us today to witness this vote. But I think it still needs to be said that this brief discussion is the culmination of a conversation about budget and program priorities, which has gone on since the fall. And sometimes people are astonished that we seem to, without thought, approve a budget. And I would just like to point out for the record that we've been thinking about this item by item in many cases with Dr. Veronese since November, or perhaps it was October. It almost never stops. And I think we should be pleased with ourselves that we are so engaged with this process and grateful to Dr. Dr. Serino, for dragging us along, dragging us into this process, which has been immensely profitable. And what it means is that now we can look at a budget and we're not complaining about spending twice as much money for athletic guards or some other particular items, because we've already been there.
Thank you, Victor. Any other comments?
Bob, I would, because we're in a situation where we're going to do something tonight that's never been done before, I would ask that we have a roll call vote.
Sure. There's no other comments. We'll start by Victor. You're up on top of my screen, so we'll start with you.
I vote aye.
Lucy? You waved your hand, aye. Bob?
Aye.
Norm?
Aye.
Maura? Aye.
Sorry, aye.
Jamie?
I vote aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
Missy?
Aye.
And I vote aye. And Christine is not here tonight. So it's unanimous vote. Thank you very much. This is hopefully the last time we do this way. But I think we've tried to do as much public outreach and comments as we could generate on the budget and spend a great deal of time trying to explain every detail. Thank you very much. Next item is new business. I had sent out several requests for searches for consultants for superintendent searches. I have received 2 back. I can email them to everybody if you all want them, or I can make paper copies and mail them to you. Which would you prefer, or not get them at all? We've got 2, they're both from nonprofits. I'm still waiting for the 3rd proposal.
I would prefer email is fine with me.
Email.
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 All right. Okay, AV email for everybody. One of them is about 30 pages, but it's mostly references. So, all right, we'll do that. Kim, if you're in it, can you mail them out? And hopefully I'll get the other proposal within the next couple of days. We can, if you get a chance to look at them, we'll put together a meeting, perhaps after the June 10th meeting, if we have time, to start talking about our process of selection of the consultant. Thank you very much. Any questions on that? They both look similar and good. Committee reports, Maura, for well-being.
Hi, guys. So we had our meeting for well-being yesterday, and Kath really summed it up really well with the slideshow that she had, as well as talking about the resources that we now have in place and the extensive discussions they've been having as far as where the well-being of students, staff, families, the community in general, not only now, but in the future. Our topic was solely just about that yesterday. Molly Yale and Connor Byrne are our student representatives, and they gave us it was actually a very heavy meeting yesterday. They gave us some insightful information as far as the impact that this is really having on the students, especially the high school seniors. They shared their frustration and disappointment that their whole career of District 13 is ending the way it is. Kath did share with us that there is still plans for a virtual graduation at this point, as the in-person kind of ceremony does not look like that's really going to be a possibility this summer. And they also, the student representatives, we talked extensively how right now just the interaction with the teachers as far as their direct instruction and then also with the classmates is invaluable, and it's what they're all missing the most right now. Amy Schaefer's our teacher representative on the committee, and she gave us some of her insight as far as the teacher aspect right now. And she did share how their staff, the staff in general, is really relying on each other, and the camaraderie and support has been amazing as far as in Strong where she's teaching. We did discuss as far as the family and the parents' concerns, along with the obvious stressors that all the families are feeling right now. We also discussed, as Kath shared in her slideshow, that there's the enormous coming back into school, all of the fears and frustrations that will be happening then, and as well as the fear of their safety as the kids return or when they return to the school. Let's see, Kath reminded us again about the anxiety and depression, not only for the students, but also for the staff. Just even entering their classrooms at this time with the buildings completely empty where they all left off on March 13th has been really affecting a lot of them as far as trying to walk in and have to end the school year like no one else has ever planned before. We had, as a committee, we brainstormed ways that the staff and the board can best support at this point right now. And it was agreed that really the best way for the board to support right now is to just be cognizant of the fact that the health and the well-being of the students is the greatest concern right now, above all else. And Kath did point out too how lucky we are in this district, because we are, if not one of the only, but the only district that actually has a well-being committee, and that's how focused we are to put it first and foremost in our district. And with that, if the board or any community members have any other advice or discussion that they want or anything that they have, I'm sure I welcome it, and I'm sure Kath and Bob would welcome any input.
Thanks, Maura. The board, Brian Falcone asked if the board would put a contribution to graduation, and what it was is a red cord that will go around their cap and gown, and the red cord stands for willpower, strength, and courage. And so I wrote a little note for the board indicating, we are sorry about the graduation, but we're giving them this cord to go on their robe and what it symbolizes for each kid, and how they have the strength and courage that they've got through this year. Any other comments on well-being? Thank you. On the next item is communications. Most of the stuff we've talked about already earlier on, but I also, Kath and I had a meeting with Martin Anderson, who chairs our building committee, but he's also been appointed as a long-term recovery coordinator for the town. And we've met with him about the role that the schools will play in long-term recovery in Durham. And so there'll be a connection with that over the next couple of months as to what Martin is doing with the town and how we're connected. So there will be a close coordination between the town and the school, whether use of buildings, use of parking areas, food service, whatever that could be in terms of the long-term recovery. Any other communications? No? Well, thank you. Next item is public comment. Ken, are you still there? If you have any people who would like to comment at this time.
We still have just one caller on the line. If you wish to make a comment, please dial *9 to indicate that to us.
If not, thank you again for having another Zoom meeting. I wish we could see you all in person. And thank you for those who've made donations to the board scholarship for those that the student that most expresses the core ethical values. And we'll be giving out that scholarship along with the other awards. I think the awards are going to be sent by mail. Is that correct, Kath? I think that's what we were told. If not anything else, I'll have to take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. A second.
Second?
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And thank you and good night and stay safe.
No, thank you.
Aye.
Good night.
Bye.